You send me a very long feedback, right? Jason, you on WhatsApp. So I blue tick you, right? Then after that, I reply after 2 hours later, noted with thanks. All right, welcome everybody. Today we have Neil in the house again. And Neil, maybe you introduce yourself one more time.
Okay, cool. So thanks for having me.
Welcome.
My name is Neil Yang. I've worked across different kinds of companies over my career, 15 years. Spent just about the last 9 years before the last couple of months in the HR space. And then for the past few months, I've been working in people tech, specifically in a company called OnLoop, where I'm the GM for Singapore and sort of broader Asia. And we are basically in the business of enabling managers with the aid of technology to build the best teams, to build safer and high-performing cultures.
Right. Thank you. So I know, like, I talk to a lot of HR directors, and they're always like intrigued by HR tech because they're trying to find different ways to ease this whole people aspect. So in a company, it's always business aspects and people aspects, and the people aspects can be extremely challenging. So one thing that as I coach managers and leaders, the issue that they always have is feedback. And feedback is a very big thing. We all know in a perfect system where there's nobody offended, everybody should have free flow of communicated feedback immediately. Right? Not after like 6-12 months in a performance review. And one thing I see as a challenge for managers is that they don't really do it very well. Right? They tell something, it can be vague and all that. What is your experience when it comes to what would be perfect feedback?
Yeah. I mean, I think the academic literature is very clear, right? Great feedback is timely. It's specific, and ideally it's action oriented, right? So, the reality is that as managers is kind of a challenge, right? Because you have a million things to do. You're responsible for not only your own work, but now also an additional bunch of people of varying experiences and varying ability to work well together. If you're a first-time manager of a new team, it's so much more difficult, right? Because you are effectively, through what you're doing or not doing, creating culture for your team, right? The safety, the psychological and emotional safety that is present within the team, as well as, I suppose, the level of performance. Because I was listening to a recent podcast, and I think it was Brian Chesky from Airbnb. He talks about how culture is what happens when the manager is not there. Right? And yet the manager has such an important role in creating culture. By the things that we do with the limited time, energy, bandwidth that we do have. And so, I think a lot of what I currently do and, things that I've done in the past to try and think about how to make this easier has been around sort of how do we take friction out of behaviors that make it really difficult for people to be the best manager. And specifically in the area of feedback, how do we set conditions such that people are much more willing to give feedback? They don't have to log in through like thousands of different layers. Or
what do you mean by condition?
I guess it's just the ecosystem, right? If we think from a design thinking perspective, right? If we think about today's feedback process, I think universally, and even within HR people, we agree that to be harsh is broken. To be a little bit more constructive, I think there's a lot of upside, right? And particularly in this particular area, technology can form a big part of helping people to give and receive feedback better. So that we don't be in a situation where, if I do want to give feedback, it's two possibilities. One, I sit down with you and I give you the feedback in as straightforward a way possible, and
as fast as possible.
As possible, right? But how I give it to you determines to a large extent what you do with it, both positive and negative, right? So there's that, and then there's also the great managers. They give feedback, they give observations, they write it down such that at the end of the process, when you go for a performance appraisal, which is then used for promotions, used for compensation and deciding how much you get and bonuses and stuff like that, they have something to call back to. But I think realistically, if you look at the universe of managers, that's maybe the top 3-5% maybe, and we know people like that. We've worked for people like that.
Yeah.
I think we generally know much more on the other end of the spectrum, unfortunately, right? So really, really good, solid individual contributors who may not be so great at managing teams. And it's not a question of like, there's always the temptation to say, they are bad manager.
Yeah.
But, I think if we double click into that, a lot of times people are bad managers, not because they wake up in the morning and say like, hey, I'm going to be like super manipulative.
Yeah, today I'm going to be an ass.
No, people are not like that, right? Most people are generally good people, but it becomes a function.
Intention, good intention.
It becomes a function of willingness and ability. Like I'm willing, but if I'm not able because I've got 10,000 things to do, and for me to be able to give feedback and record feedback and keep track with feedback and run good one-on-ones, it's gonna take either a lot of energy, or because I'm not of a particular natural leader kind of tendency. It can be trained, but it will just take a lot out of them.
A lot longer.
So I think there's a lot of space for technology then to say like, hey, let's give you some tools. Gen AI is great at taking observations. Jason was late today. I was very angry. And converting it into something that, firstly, for Jason to hear is a lot easier to digest. And more importantly, for him to understand what I'm trying to say and then do something about it. Because, in the workplace, if we want to try and get people to be higher performing, to reach their full potential for themselves, it's important that they receive that feedback. Because if not, it's like, am I doing well? Don't know. Like, is this behavior okay? And that's where culture comes in. Because if, like, in the case of being late, if as a leader you're like, I really hate it when people are late, but I don't know how to give the feedback. People see Jason is late. Next day, David is going to be late. Next day, Jane is going to be late. And if as a leader, you don't have the tools or the ability to then say like, hey folks, when we are late, it can cause reputational problems. It shows that we are not terribly professional, and that has real bearing on our ability to execute strategy and to achieve our goals. If as a manager, I don't have that capability or like that capacity, or I'm not given the tools to help me to do that, then that's when you get the problem of cultures going down the hill very quickly, or like, toxicity starting to permeate through certain teams or organizations. So, I think, again, road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like, there are many, many steps between like starting a company and thinking like, hey, I want this company to succeed, and the place where, we hear of terrible teams, right? Like where, mediocrity is tolerated, or like, it's more important to be seen to do things than actually doing things. Whoever talks loudest wins, whoever speaks best wins, right? Like there's many steps along the way. And without making it like a silver bullet, like feedback has the ability to course correct people, so that you prevent a company, a team, even a person from degenerating, sort of going down that slippery slope from wanting to be the best to ending up in a situation where like, how did we get here?
So you did talk about feedback, and then you went deeper into culture, which is actually a larger thing we can chat about. And I do feel that when it comes to feedback, one of the things that you mentioned, timeliness. I was coaching one of the directors in the MNC, and she told me that when I was coaching her, I said, so do you give feedback? She said, yeah, of course I give, right? Then does John know about this? He said, yeah, I do. I do share with him certain issues that I feel that he has missed the mark. And then I asked her, when do you do it? Then she says that, in our quarterly meetup.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you mean that's the only time you tell him? Yeah, but then, So then I asked her, so in the quarterly meetup, with that limited amount of time, in the end, you give the feedback. Then she said, actually, we have too many things to talk about. Then in the end, we don't. So one thing that she had trouble doing is the idea of timeliness. How do we get it as timely as possible? And some managers would be like, okay, so if it's timely, why don't there are a few mediums to choose from, right? One is face-to-face, take out 15 minutes of our time and do that. The other one is a little bit more distant, which is either emails or even more distant, a little bit is WhatsApp.
Yep.
So the principle behind feedback is that if something is important, or the principle in life and WhatsApp is
Yes.
that if it's important, it's never on WhatsApp. It cannot be on WhatsApp. You can't ask a girl to marry you on WhatsApp. You can't, maybe I can steady my can, probably as a girlfriend. But important things like feedback, it's so difficult. And sometimes the issue we have, sometimes when you hear managers that I send him a very long feedback, and guess what? So imagine if I send you a very long feedback, and no, you send me, you are my boss. You send me a very long feedback, right? Jason, you on WhatsApp. So I blue tick you, right? Then after that, I reply after 2 hours later, noted with thanks. How do you feel?
You know, I think
No, let's say you did that lah.
yeah, I mean it's obviously not ideal, right? Because it's just it's an acknowledgement, but you have no color in terms of whether firstly the person agrees,
Yeah,
and secondly whether they actually know what to do with it. And I mean, look, we know this, right? Life is stressful enough. I think during the pandemic it was probably worse, but people are in perpetual state of overwhelm. So you send them a wall of text like wow, 4 or 5 paragraphs long, right? Like can print out and like 2 pages on the A4, right?
Exactly. And we know people who always do that.
It's just like I don't know what to do with this.
Too much,
right?
yeah.
And sadly, I think the reason why it gets to that is because there's probably and again the manager is well intending, you know, like
Yes.
in some ways it's even the debate is open debate whether it's better that they send a 2-page feedback
or don't send at all. Yeah.
And I guess the is it dependent on what's the outcome of it, right? Like,
Exactly.
like I tell you 2-page later and immediately I put you on a PIP or like like weaponized PIPs. Again, another big Pandora's box. But if I send you that and then immediately it leads to something, like you don't get promoted or no bonus this year, then it's obviously wrong lah, right? But if actually if you receive that feedback early on, 2 pages, it's not great, but it's not the worst. It's not the worst bad thing. It might even be the best bad thing in that case, because then
I like that best bad thing.
as a recipient of that, I can then go to my manager and say like, hey boss, you know, Jason, like I really appreciate the thing. I thank you for the time you took to type that, but maybe we can do it in more regular manner, such that, you know, because it seems to me like you were sitting with this for a while, right? And so that's why you had 2 pages or even like half a page worth of feedback for me. I think, you know, there's something to be said, and I know that your viewers, your listeners include both managers as well as the managed, right? Yes. And, you know, one of the things that I was taught early on was like go and actively seek out feedback, right? But
it's a golden attitude. I mean, if people do that, you are actually giving a permission or the keys, and you're giving the keys to everybody else to say that come to my place and let me know what's happening.
Yeah.
But if you don't actively give out these keys to say that come and tell me feedback, in our Asian culture as well, especially, we will not.
For sure.
Because if I tell you that, then it's like last time we were actually quite close. Maybe we were 7 upon 10. You give me feedback, now we are 6. Or now we're 6 or even a 4.
Yeah.
So that's a great attitude to have. However, I don't hear a lot of people do that.
No, for sure not. I mean, I was lucky. I joined a management program, a management development program, which meant that we sort of go in knowing that we're going to be given feedback. And in fact, one might say that, and the people who were giving us feedback knew that we would take it in a way that, or the expectation was that we would take it.
So you're programmed, it's a culture there. It's
so there was a culture in the program which meant that when I went to somebody for feedback and said, hey, can you tell me what I did well? And more importantly, almost what I didn't do well. Because like one of the old heads of countries that I reported to, or I reported indirectly to in the past, said that, you know, a lot of times when you ask somebody for feedback, right, as a manager, like or to a manager, when we say to our manager, hey, can you give me some feedback? Actually, a lot of times what you're hoping is like, hey, praise me. Like, tell me what I'm doing well, right? Because like then I can feel better, I can feel more engaged with you. And no, that's great, right? And it's important to build that degree of safety. And certainly nobody is saying like, hey, out of every 10 pieces of feedback, right, 9 pieces make it like bad feedback, right, or constructive feedback, so the person can max their improvement. I think there are some orgs that are like some organizations, their culture is like that, but I think it's a balance, right? So like getting good feedback and the constructive feedback needs to be there. And with constructive feedback, like at our company, we call it discovering blind spots, because it's not necessarily something that is not a weakness. It may be very often we have blind spots where we don't even realize there may be something that we are doing that
all of us have.
Like I mean, And finding that out is a double blessing, because firstly, now you know.
Yeah.
And secondly, you can do something about it. Versus, to an extent, the things that we do well, most people try and seek out things that, again, culturally, it depends.
Culturally depends.
But a lot of times, if you're working in like, fairly corporate environments, you're almost primed to start thinking about your strengths so that you can navigate and, be able to talk to people about it.
The funny thing about this is that when I ask leaders, do you share more about negative or positive? They always tell me negative. We are in tune as a society to look for gaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like long time ago we had a factory and then they were like, okay, we push out 10,000 units, right?
Yeah.
Then because of that factory mindset and long the industrial age, management then was all about like, hey, now we're doing 9,999. Something is wrong.
Yeah.
So if something's wrong, fix that. So there's some gap. And that inculcated into all the management way of thinking to a point where now we always look for gaps. And it's very rare actually that people pick out the positive parts. Praise to some people, and I was coaching one of the GMs of one of the listed companies in Singapore. He told me this, like, Jason, I give praise. I said, okay, so they know I give praise, but they know it's only if they meet my standard. Then I said, what is your standard? He said, have you changed the world? So that's the standard that he had. It's like, and I said, dude, cannot lah. Obviously cannot. Like, which means that a lot of people know what they're doing wrong, but they don't know what they're doing right.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And it's also the idea of human nature. We pinpoint the things people who we are close to. We pinpoint the negative. We don't appreciate. There's a lack of gratitude to say that, hey, well, thanks for doing this for me, even for our best friends.
Yeah. I think the funny thing is that it exists in our minds. So like a lot of times, the clearest is like in long-term like relationships, right?
Relationships,
like, romantic relationships.
Yeah.
Very often it's like, and you can probably ask my wife, right? Like, I have to be very intentional to say like, thank you for doing this, or like, and obviously,
and it makes a world of difference.
Yeah. And we can do it better for sure.
Yeah.
But I think in all areas of life, right, having that sort of ability to look at things and like, it ties into thankfulness. It ties into just generally building on positives. It's not to say there's no negative and maybe ignore the negatives, right? But
you look at the sunshine rather than the rain clouds that's coming. I mean, you can choose, right?
But also I feel that the so-called negative feedback, right? I mean, it's called negative feedback because very often it makes us feel bad, right?
Yeah.
Like the fact that it makes you feel bad in an appropriate amount is maybe not the worst thing. I mean, when we train physically, when we go and run, when we swim, when we cycle, when we do, it feels bad, right? But we have learned, if you are any kind of sports person, to appreciate some of that ache because you're getting stronger. In a similar way, I think with sort of feedback about areas that we need to improve, we have to accept there's that ache. What we don't want is to be given the feedback. It's like in training, right? If you are going to the gym, you have never done even half a stack, and then you go for the first session, you try and pump out a full stack. You're gonna ache to the point where the next day you're not gonna be able to do anything in the gym the next day. And I think that's important. And if you draw the analogy back to feedback, in cultures like Asia, I think sometimes we are a bit reserved about giving feedback until we are not. Right? Then the 2-page feedback comes out, right? Or like the nuclear thing happens where, back in the old days, you hear about flying mugs, flying phones, or like yelling in the meeting rooms, right?
Or letter out of nowhere that you're on a PIP and it's like, hey, how come I didn't know? I thought it was doing well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think as leaders, we need to have that integrity to say, or to build, right? Because I've failed many times, right? Like where we can then say to people, hey, this is what I've observed. It's making me feel bad as well. But I'm pushing past that because I know that if I give you this feedback, you are going to get better. And actually, as a manager, I'm getting better as well. Because when you get better and you contribute broader to the team, then in a way, in terms of outcomes as a manager, I've been more successful, right? Versus like, let's just keep it, then hope that turns a corner. Or I'll give a very loudly or sigh very loudly, or I will say something very circumspect to hope that you get it.
It's all hints like breadcrumbs, but it's not direct.
I mean, perhaps it is my personal, it's my personality, right? That I will try to be more, at least in the workplace, I try to be more direct with people.
Yeah.
And as managers, I think, and that's why, I talked about culture earlier. If we talk about, 999 to 1,000, our production dropped by 1, it's an emergency. There are certain cultures where, that is accepted and even celebrated. Like if you think about security, right? Oh, guys, this year, or like, nuclear energy, guys, we only had 1 accident this year, right? That's not okay, right?
Yeah,
so I think it's founded in appropriate levels of expectations and culture. And then, that's why we have goals as well, right? So feedback is founded on goals of
definitely
commonly understood, ideally should be set correctly, goals which are appropriate to the individual, their level of competency, their experience, their capacity, right? Because like we know that as managers, if we have somebody who, their family is going through something, right? Then you know how to adjust.
Yeah, there's some
so
bandwidth
like,
for,
hey guys, just for this season, let's
leeway,
everybody else, let's pull a little bit harder so that, John or Jane has a little bit more space by which they can deal with their, whatever's happening in their lives. And when that's done, they will come back and, we'll and you do it because then others will do it for you almost, right? And I mean, that's culture.
Yes.
But I think, that's a culture that most managers would want for their teams.
The funny thing is they do want that culture. However, what I've seen and when coaching so many different leaders, they're not clear of what that culture, which culture I define as actions and behaviors they want to see. They're not really clear themselves. They just know. The funny thing is that they know about it because they see something and they're frustrated. So emotionally, they know it triggers them emotionally, either positive or negative. But usually it's the negative. It's like, why this person sent this kind of email?
Yeah.
Why use this word? And I'll see them say things like, especially if maybe it's a new hire, like 10 years in the industry, really high flyer and all that, come in, it's like, what do they teach them there? Right. So the funny thing for culture, if I were to break down why a manager is so, or where frustrations actually come from, frustrations come from just one very simple thing. And the frustrations can be for your work or certain things that you see that, hey, how come you talk to that person in this manner? So the people aspect or the business aspect. Frustrations all come from this one source. Any frustration you've ever had with another person comes from this thing called standards. You have a standard that is different from mine. If I ask you, hey, help me research on 3 competitors, you give me three-liner email. So your standard is this because maybe in your previous career, your boss would be like, anything more than 3 lines, you're wasting my time. Me, if I'm the kind that reads Wikipedia and reads all those source notes, my standard, which I didn't tell you, is at least a 2-pager with 5 source. So because of that, I'm frustrated with you and you don't even know. So the standards is what I see that managers don't share at all. They don't share the people standards, which is, hey, actually, Neil, just now when you're talking to her, I noticed that your voice was a little bit louder. Things like that. There's a people aspect. And standards for work is what you say, is the goals. So what is my goal? My standard is 9 upon 10 for this. You have reached 7. So then once you have that standards, then we call this the only solution for any frustration is this thing called a missing conversation. And a missing conversation can be in the form of feedback and any kind of way that you can communicate.
Conversation or conversations as well, right? Because I think it's important to, it's a process, right? And you can label it conversation with a capital C, right? So it's a process of conversation, right? But imagine you work for a boss who every meeting you sit down and it's super intense, right? Like, hey, I got 5 agenda items that I want through with you. Like, 1, what are you doing well? 2, what are you not doing well? Like, what are the strengths? I think sometimes.
So you're saying that sometimes they clump it up so much that to the person, it's overwhelming.
Yes. And I think humans are good at making observations. We are maybe not so good at figuring out how to give feedback in a way that it will be received by the person and they can act on it, right? Again, not trying to plug, but from an from a technology perspective, we know that, Gen AI is fairly good at that, right? Like, Gen AI,
So you're talking about Gen AI means they soften.
you're bridging the communication gap, right?
Right. So the human aspect, that they suck at something at the business side, but the human side, we're making it more palatable.
Yeah.
We're making the dish nicer.
I think we call it the eloquence gap, or like, where we make decisions based on who speaks well. We can call it the eloquence bias, right?
Yeah.
But in management, for better or worse today, like being able to communicate effectively is very much tied to eloquence, right?
Yes.
When it doesn't necessarily need to be, but if we take that as the current operating condition, as a manager, if I'm able to be more eloquent and get help with how to give feedback in a way that not only sort of puts it in the right tone, but also helps to give examples of how the person could do something differently based on the knowledge of the entire feedback, like universe of feedback that's been given to every single person that's publicly accessible on whatever large language model you use, then it can drive better outcomes because you're using a tool, right?
You're giving prompts to somebody so that they can choose what prompts they want to have, so that they can serve that dish in a way that person will fully eat it.
Yeah, and obviously don't like put it in immediately, like take the feedback and just like, nah, it's yours, right? I mean, you still need to own it, right?
Yeah.
What we're talking about is bridging the ability to communicate, not the ability to give feedback, right? Because the giving of feedback and the following up on it happens still in the real world, right?
Yes.
You still need to, if for example, the person has a challenge with prioritization, right? And you tell them, hey, you have a problem with prioritization. I mean, put in a nice way. And like, why don't you make a list of all the things that you know that you have to do, and you do the 2x2 matrix, what is urgent, what is important, and you start grouping it, right? You can send them an article about it, but as a manager, part of your job is still to coach them through that process, especially for people who are, junior. And I think as a junior, it is not out of norm to ask for some coaching, right? Either from your direct manager, or if he or she is, they just really don't have the bandwidth. I think there's many ways that you can get coached, right, to help you to be able to act on whatever feedback that's given to you.
Yeah. So coming back, the idea of coaching is so big now for leaders. A good leader is a coach.
Yeah.
Right? So a lot of times, last time leadership was all dictatorship. That means, and now the answers all lie with me.
Yep.
And now we're seeing that there's the huge trend of like a great leader is a great coach, and even the younger generation all want to be coached. And they wanna know what is not only the weaknesses, but you see a stronger affinity towards they want to know what their strengths are as well. One thing I want to just bring you back. I like the word that you use. This thing called you change feedback to discovering blind spots. One of the hacks I have when it comes to feedback that I do share is you don't use the word feedback, because feedback already emotionally, that word is, what do you call it? It's like a dynamite. Like it's highly charged, and it's charged sometimes negatively. The word feedback. It's like, hey, Neil, I want to give you some feedback.
You're like, am I in trouble?
So straight away, something you go into a space in your mind and the environment where it's like, oh no, what's happening?
Yeah.
So one thing that we could do, like that to change that, instead of using the word feedback, is, hey Neil, I want to share with you, I noticed ...
Yep.
That's it. I noticed ... and leave it there. So sometimes the funny thing is that when I share something, I noticed you did this, you might have the level of self-awareness that you already tell me, oh yeah, boss, actually this one, I already know.
Yeah.
I messed up here.
Yeah.
So without even going in, because you just say notice, compared to, I want to give you feedback that you did this. It's just a different way. And I feel that it's almost the whole idea of Starbucks, it's like small, medium, large. We don't use that anymore.
Yeah.
We use what? Tall, grande, and venti. So it's like, wow, these are confusing things, but it's the rebranding that makes somebody buy a $6 coffee. It's like, hey, this is different. And it's saying venti makes you like a baller, right? Yeah. So I like how you change that, but it also depends on the culture, because some cultures don't use discovering blind spots like that culture you had. Some cultures just continue to use.
They're straight up, it's a weakness.
Yeah, it's like you messed up.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. If if you are subject to such culture, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose as with everything, there's two ways that you can do it, right? You can either figure out how to adapt and thrive in the culture, or you can choose to leave the culture, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, assuming that you choose to adapt and thrive, I think, you can set certain boundaries about how you think about things, right? I mean, nobody can force you to think in a one way or another. I mean, they can set conditions, etc., that nudge you in a direction. But if you have certain very deep-seated values and you want to think about things in a certain way and you train yourself to think in that way, I think then you survive more than others and you can continue to be a productive force versus just being subject to the environment that you're in.
Agree.
And so for I suppose for younger viewers, I think it's also about thinking about how you have a certain core, right? And also protecting
Core
some
means
of
what? Like means your values and beliefs and all that?
your values, your beliefs, the energy that you have, what you allow to affect you almost, right? And that's something that we all need to do work for ourselves, right?
That's the self-awareness exercise, like trying to figure out who you are.
And if you do that and somebody comes to you and say, hey, Jason, you're really stupid, you can rephrase that in your mind to say like, hey, maybe this person is going through something as well. And again, this is very high level skill required, right? But
that's like 7 years Tibet, like kind of like high levels of meditation. Then most people can't do that.
Yeah, but most people will choose.
Already.
Most people will choose to react.
Yes.
Like why are you calling me stupid? You also stupid, what? Right?
Exactly. Yeah, and then just goes
GG,
down
right?
Totally gone. Yeah.
But if you can figure out how you can respond to it, by starting to be more mindful about
it's a great way. So one thing is that the boss is not only on the driver's seat. You can actually control certain things in your destiny, and so every boss wants to know what is the best way to leverage you as a person. So if you share your owner's manual, that hey, actually, boss, when you tell me this way, somehow or other it helps me to have more agency or behave in a certain way that's a bit more positive.
Yeah.
That is great if your boss is not egoistic.
Yeah.
If your boss is egoistic, they'll be like, who the heck are you to tell me what to do?
Yeah.
But most managers that I know, they really want to know what is your owner's manual. How is the best way to share things with me? And sometimes when I've done this before, sometimes some people are okay getting feedback in public. Some people you give in public, die.
Yeah.
So it's the analogy of the beer mug and the wine glass, right? Beer mug, hit up, no issue.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're solid, they're no issue.
Yeah.
And wine glass is not they're wrong, it's just that they are wired or their core is in such a way that breaks easily.
Yeah.
And then it takes a longer time to go back up to norm because it affects them so much.
Yeah.
So if they are able to share, it's like then the bosses will be like, hey, so much better because now I have more tools.
Yeah. I think it's also, when we talk about feedback in general, we've talked already about positive feedback, like building up feedback and constructive feedback in terms of like trying to point out where they could, level up. Where you want to give positive feedback, you want to give recognition, you want to give like appreciation, give it as publicly as possible.
Yes.
Right? And be consistent, right? Because like if I give John, I don't give Jason. Then Jason's like, wow, how come you don't give me feedback?
Then what seeps in is favoritism.
Yes, exactly.
Then once favoritism come in, total gone case.
Yeah. And so as leaders, it almost helps us to continue to maintain standards. Like you need to do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when people reach that standard and obviously don't have maybe a slightly lower bar, right? But give feedback, give recognition generously, right? Because then people feel a better sense of belonging. Yeah, I think there's connection, which then means that when I do give them the feedback, that could be pointing out certain areas of development or certain shortcomings or something that they messed up in. Sometimes even publicly, they know that I've set enough of a basis, like a base of like, I recognize you as an individual. I see what you do well. I've given you specific, again, timely, again, right? And like impactful, like action-based. Like when you did a podcast, you were able to respond very quickly to something that's happening in the market. And, it led to a lot of people actually benefiting from that, right? So please continue to do that, right? Then that, it builds up my ability to know like what was my superpower. Yeah. Almost, and continue to leverage on it. And then like, the birds will fly, the monkeys will climb trees, the fish will swim. Yeah. But then when I come to point out to you that, hey, you know, in this area, you didn't do so well. But then you know that I recognize your strengths already.
Yes.
And so it makes it easier to take. And it also, if there's a level of trust that comes from me having spent time with you and giving you recognition for things, I'm more willing, more likely, more able to draw on that reserve to say, okay, let's try and figure out. Let's do a little bit of the harder work to figure out how I can leverage or how I can start to fill up or level up in a particular area. But also, you know, I think with areas that are feedback, you know, there's two things you can do with it. Either you can deal with it, like actually level up. You can also learn to delegate. And for folks who are sort of in the in-between being a individual contributor and starting to move into leadership, wanting to move into some kinds of leadership of people, formally, informally, or leadership in terms of scopes of work or like streams of work, you can also choose to delegate, right? And how do you then delegate is also a function of your emotional bank account with other people.
Yes.
I think the most enlightened organizations are realizing that as much as feedback in a performance appraisal tends to be leader and follower, actually there's a much broader environment or like ecosystem by which you can get feedback that is a collaborative, it's a team sport, right? To make sure that you have a good understanding of what you're doing. You know, we see the rise of things like 360, where in the past only your manager gives you feedback. Now, you know, to do a 360, you need to nominate people who you work with, people who report to you, people who are above you,
or dotted line and things like that.
Obviously, it's a huge effort. Like anybody who's gone through a 360 knows that there's a lot, right? And like sometimes
but you really have good clarity.
Sometimes we joke that I got a 360 request, and now I need to, if I want to do it well, then I got to think about it and like, you know, spend enough time and energy to recall what we've done so that I can give it to you. And I will do that, right? Because I want you to be better. When you succeed, I succeed, that kind of thing. You know, and so I think what people, I guess, also need to realize is, if the fear of getting sort of constructive feedback from your boss is too great, then actually there's a huge number of people who you work with who can be sources of feedback as well. Almost so that they give you feedback. You know how like we tell our children, hey, I'm going to tell you this so that when you get out to the real world, like you don't have to hear it from somebody else almost, right? So like, let me give you that feedback so that you don't get it from the other people.
Yeah, because it's the idea of feedback. I like to give this analogy is calling out somebody's spinach in their teeth.
Yep.
It's just I noticed that, and you have that, and if you don't get it from me, the next person, if they don't get it, your spinach in your teeth is throughout the day, the entire day.
Yeah.
And so the issue, or the spinach in your teeth, the issue you have will always be there until somebody points it out to you. And you're great to say that definitely your boss is able to do, your manager, but also your peers is a huge pool of people. And the only way that I've seen it really work is that you give the keys to people.
Yes.
Because people get so offended easily when peers give feedback. It's almost like it's charged. It's already emotionally charged. And what you said just now, you called it the emotional bank. I can call it also social equity. Do I have social equity with you?
Yes.
Do I help you doing things? Do I give you feedback positively? So because of that, above your head, there's a bank account that's high.
Yes.
Then once there is the negative, which always draws down, you are able to draw not on empty. And funny thing is that there's this relationship psychologist called Dr. John Gottman, and he has a ratio actually, or a magic ratio of positive and negative feedback or negative words, that if he sees in a couple, if it goes below this, they're going to hit for divorce.
Yeah.
And the ratio is that for every one negative thing that you point out to somebody, you actually need 5 positive things for it to maintain in a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And that is for relationships in a couple, but it's the same as partnerships. We are 2 human beings. Does Neil see me up or respect and honor what I'm doing to a point where it's like, Neil, one day he has 5 things that he said about me. One day he says, hey, Jason, you know this thing? It's like, oh, no issue.
Yeah.
But it's that when there's nothing, that's going to be the one that's strained.
Yeah. I think 2 things there, right? One is, so there's 2 ways to get to that 5-to-1 ratio, assuming that you take that 5-to-1 ratio as the operating model, right? One is for everything everything that I want to tell you that you need to improve, I got to think of 5 things to tell you. Right? So,
but that's gonna be unnatural.
Yeah, exactly. So
Totally
that's one way to
unnatural.
look at it.
Yeah.
But the other way also to look at it is for leaders. How do you create the environment such that if I give you, because there's if you think about it, 2 concepts. One is like how you make me feel, right?
Yeah.
So like I think what Gottman is saying is like, if you say good things, it makes them feel good. You say bad things, it makes them feel bad. Like it makes them tense up. It makes them like want to oppose it. How do we change the paradigm? How do we change culture such that I can give you constructive feedback, but you actually feel good about it because you see it as for my improvement. Like I am helping you, right? I am giving you the next level. You know, and we've seen this at work before, right? Almost like when your leader gives you a bit more work to do, right? Or gives you something that's slightly outside your scope in the view of trying to develop you. Even though it's more work, maybe I'm going to put in more hours, maybe it's going to make me feel slightly uncomfortable. But if I trust my leader, and again, that's the operating...
biggest thing.
I mean, that's the operating system that I hope all leaders trying to move towards. Then something that may, in other situations, be seen as like a negative thing can actually be one of the 5 things, you know? Like you know, Jason, you are too handsome, lah. That kind of thing. I mean, that's a hyperbole, right? It's going too far on one side. But the way that it's put across to you,
so it's framing, like
it's framing.
Framing.
It's almost framing, and it's a relationship that you have, and the assumption of intent. Right. So if you assume that it's positive intent, this person is giving me feedback about what I didn't do well, but it's so that I can improve. Then actually sometimes your one can be part of this 5. Right?
Yeah. So interesting you said that. I never thought about that when it comes to why Dr. John Gottman has this. There's one aspect of emotions which could be what I'm leaning towards from what he has said about his accuracy, I think 80% when it comes to divorce. One thing he said is actually the idea of respecting. Yes. That means like in Singapore terms, I see you up.
Yeah.
So if I see you up and you see me up, we work together, it's no issue.
Yeah.
But if you know that you do something, I'm like I give a snigger or I roll my eyes and that's that. That's
contempt, which is one of the horsemen of Gottman's framework.
So that contempt is confirm red flag, sure die one heading to divorce, confirm. Yeah. So if I extrapolate that to the 5:1, it is that does Neil know I see him up and I respect him and I respect his work, and that's why that because of that our relationship is good.
Yeah.
So there could be an emotional aspect, but there also could be that whole idea of that is either do I respect you or do I always give you the ones, which is all negative, to a point where you think that I don't see you up and you're incompetent and I look down on you. And that really strains any relationship.
Yeah. You know, I think there's 2 sides to that. So you could be sort of failing, as it were, at your job, right? One might say, who was the one who hired you in the first place?
Yeah.
You know, almost. And so there is some onus on a manager, and I'm not saying that the manager has to, you know, sacrifice themselves so that this person who has a terrible attitude and like terrible skills and is not like mishire succeeds, right? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that as a manager, you do owe a duty of care to your team, your team members to help with that at least, right? And as a team member, if you're in that kind of situation where like you know mess up one thing and then your manager starts to tell you like, oh, you know, everything is wrong.
Yeah.
I think my advice to such a person if they were in that situation is, you know, try and find lateral ways to have the conversation. And like if you really can't find a way out, then maybe that may not be the best environment for you in the first place, right? Because like you can always you only can control what you can control.
Yes.
And while you try and do various things, you always have the option to say like, look, this is not working out.
Yeah.
I have to find somewhere that it can.
Yeah. And I like the entire team. I like the analogy of a king and the queen and the kingdom. So the king and the queen sets the way of life, sets the culture of everything in there. You don't like that kingdom, you can always leave to another kingdom. Yeah. Because the king or queen can't change. And you can't expect the king or the queen to change. I mean, one basic principle of human beings is that people don't change. Unless they want to.
No pain, no change.
Yeah, they see something that they want to change, and that's why. So unless that, you can't expect that for the king or the queen, and if not, then yeah, you're right. If the kingdom is not, the way of life of that kingdom is not suitable for you, migrate. Same thing as people, right? They don't stay in Singapore, they feel that complain a lot of things, and okay, then leave. There's nothing else you can do. You vote with your resignation, and that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
I want to come back a little bit about WhatsApp. Because I believe a lot of leaders still do that, and they see it as the best way because I will forget.
Yeah.
What do you think that they could do besides doing that WhatsApp? Because WhatsApp is so crypted to it's neutral to a point where it can fling to anger and sternness, or you can fling to like, hey, actually, I just noticed this and all that, but we can't read it.
Yeah.
What can they do? Like, so one thing I did share, because these things are so there are two ways to make, especially and I've seen this and I experienced this myself. To other people have done this to me, and I'm like, wow, it just disarms me. So one way Singapore we can do this very easily is like, after I talk to you about something like quite serious, suddenly I say something like, no lah,
joking
shumeh, MEH, LAH, any Singlish somehow disarms us, because we suddenly go from very intense to a very lighthearted. So that's one way I've seen it. That if you really like bopian, you could actually do a voice message. That would be even better.
Yes.
But if you really cannot, then having those la meh and all that helps them to understand that is serious. But it's like there's a certain tonality to it. I want it to make it very obvious for you. The other way, emojis.
Yeah.
So as many emojis as possible, so that the other person understands where you're coming from. Yeah, but so these are the few ways that I feel that managers can use if that is their system lah. But it's also not it's not a robust system.
Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect system, right? And there are various ways. At On Loop we do position ourselves as sort of an alternative to your manager notebook, right? Every manager has a manager notebook, right? Where you have conversation with people, you write down, you know, what did they mention during the one-on-one, so that you follow up after that, right?
Yes.
Most managers, and I just spoke to a leader who told me he has a box of like tens of these notebooks, right?
Oh my. Cannot find it.
And you never read it.
Yeah, you never
read it. You read it for like 1-2 months later, and like sometimes it's almost like a joke book, because last time I found a notebook that I had from long ago. I opened it, I was like, wow, I was so different then, and it's quite cute and it's quite funny, right? But you can use technology, I suppose, and this is where there's a confluence of different things.
Right.
You have technology that helps you to rewrite feedback in a way that is much more.
But it's quite
acceptable.
brilliant. Rewriting feedback is almost the idea of like rephrasing everything to make it palatable.
Yeah, it's a coach in your pocket, right? Of how to do feedback.
Oh, I like that. Coach in your pocket. Yeah.
Technology can also help you to tag certain things. So like, we talked about how feedback and performance is sometimes more a collaborative sport nowadays, right? And so like, if I get feedback from you as my manager, but I also get feedback from like 3 or 4 other of my teammates, and
on the same issue,
or all different things, right?
Yep.
If you have a way to track past, sort of tag these feedbacks and like to skill sets or like to behaviors, then I'm going to be able to very quickly start to be able to see trends of things that I'm doing well and discover my superpowers, and also uncover blind spots, right? Like if everybody tells me, like I think that I'm actually quite good at communication, but everybody tells me like, Neil, you talk a bit too much.
Also,
right? You dominate conversation. Then I'll be like, so something that was my strength actually could be an area that I need to be aware, because it's a blind spot, and I can make the right actions, right? So for managers, like WhatsApp is great, right? I mean, it's
the bare minimum.
What WhatsApp solves in the feedback giving process is instant. Right? Sometimes too instant. At least now WhatsApp you can cancel, right? You can edit the messages.
Oh yes, now you can edit.
Last time you send wrongly, then you angry, then after then you gotta delete it, right? And then everybody's like, oh, what was there, right? But now at least you can you send it like everybody asleep. Not that I ever recommend doing that, but
Never do that. Yeah.
At least if you in that situation you can edit it so that it's not as damaging.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I think WhatsApp is okay for feedback that's not super important. I mean, certain things like actually check
logistics,
or
administration,
or actually this one messed up, but out of your standard of 9 upon 10, it doesn't bring it down to 5 upon 10.
Yep.
It is not it's almost a non-issue, but this is my style. Please do it this way. Right, so WhatsApp is okay for that, but for serious things and important things, never use WhatsApp.
Yeah, I think the draw of WhatsApp is also it's instant because it's easy, because it's in your pocket, right? You have it, like you go for a meeting with somebody, you're like, in this meeting I noticed that you were getting distracted midway through whatever the client was saying, right?
Yeah.
If I tell you that, you probably accept it, right? But again, like it's gone, right? Like I tell you accept it, it's gone.
Depends. If you say like it also depends on whether or not you go into attack the characters. Like, why are you not diligent? Gone case. Whatever you say, gone already.
I mean, that's a bit escalatory very quickly.
Straight away,
right?
it's like you're doing it again. You're always doing it. Gone case.
GG.
All these. Yeah, GG. But if you say something like, I noticed you were absorbed on your laptop. Can you just share what's happening? Then he said, actually I have an urgent client. Things like that. It's like, so you don't go and like jump the gun and go accuse somebody. Just notice something and let them share.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like the product that the platform that I'm working on now, we actually allow people to record observations, so they can voice record observations. And I think people are much more open in that way. And then it will transcribe, it will use Gen AI, go up to the cloud, run a model on it, and rewrite that feedback in a way that becomes much more productive, and tags it with the it with the skill sets, the behaviors, so that over time, if in an ideal world, you have somebody next to you, almost like a coach. This is why people pay for coaches, right? Yeah. Like if you are doing a new sport, or you are going to do sport at like elite levels, people relearn how to swim, right? Like to do like Ironmans and stuff like that. So having that coach with you, sort of telling you as you go and correcting as it happens is really, really important. Yeah. So like, for us, I guess what we're trying to do, and we found that this is one solution to the problem, which is that give people frictionless ways by which they can increase accountability and increase openness without increasing bureaucracy in the process, so that the people who they are managing or who they are working with just have much greater visibility of what they could do, what they could be not doing, and things like that, right? So for the manager who uses WhatsApp, like, actually, if you think about it, at least they're giving feedback.
Yes, right? Compared to ignoring them.
Yeah. Because I think that's the worst thing that can happen. So for those managers who feel like, I must have the power distance, then I suppose to those, don't be surprised that at the end of the period, like of the performance process, the performance window, nothing has changed. Yeah. And when you finally give them the feedback, they're like, I didn't even know, and like,
I'm not interested. Bye-bye.
Worse. Like, I'm offended that you wouldn't tell me when it happened. So then I have to go find a better environment that I can operate in and grow, because people generally, high-performing people, they're just the kind of people that you want in your company, actually want to grow.
Yeah. One interesting thing is that when I coach leaders, one of them says that I talk to them about affirmation and all that is important. Call out the strengths. One of them said that I don't think that's practical. And the reason why they say that is that I keep affirming that person, at the end of the year, they're going to expect something. They're going to expect certain kind of bonus, remuneration, promotions. So I rather, and basically because promotion and all that, it's you only have 1 or 2, right? You can't give to all 5 or 10. So because of that, and the stress they will have in that kind of conversation, I rather not. So they... That is what they do. They don't give affirmation or positive. They stick to the negative. So everybody's bad, and everybody's bad. And you receive a promotion, it's like, hey, actually not bad. So it's a very different mindset that some leaders have, and these are director level, and they're like, because that is a very touchy conversation. If I pump that guy up so much, and then in the end he didn't get that position, he's like, dude, what's up?
Yeah.
So it's almost like a defense mechanism that I see some leaders that they don't do that, and that's very unfortunate.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate, right? And I think increasingly people have options nowadays.
A lot. Yeah.
So maybe like currently in Tech Winter, people will be accepting of it a little bit more, but ultimately things go in cycles, right? Yeah. And like, if you ask anybody, about whether they would like to be appreciated by their manager versus not appreciated by their manager.
Obviously,
Just a simple, straight up question. Would you like to be appreciated by your manager?
Definitely.
The answer is generally going to be yes. Most
Human
of the
beings
time,
in general, same appreciation.
Assuming no trauma by that kind of
you
thing,
want to
right?
be appreciated by your friends, your family, your parents. We do, and we thrive on it. And the funny thing is that if you get appreciated or affirmed on a certain X job, the next time you're going to do better.
Yeah.
You're going to push yourself more because you suddenly have that burst of motivation to like, hey, that is my standard.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to do more.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think to me, it sounds like that particular manager may be in need of a little bit of affirmation themselves. Right? Because there's that reality. You can't pour from an empty cup. Right?
Yes,
So
yes.
they may feel
Or
like,
you learn from the cultures that
Yeah.
you were brought up in.
they might feel like, oh, nobody is affirming me. Nobody's
Exactly.
giving me the positive feedback. So
Yeah.
I don't want to give people because like I can perform well under like
Yeah,
lack of
so I'm like
positive
Rambo lah.
Yeah.
With nothing and just a paperclip, I can defeat my 100 enemies.
Yeah.
Why do you need a knife?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, I think fundamentally in leadership, there is a need to understand who you're leading, right?
Yeah.
If it does turn out that everybody you lead truly behaves and responds to you in that way, then by all means, right? And there are conditions like that, right? I mean, in a armed forces kind of context, in a firefight, like there's no like, hey, do you think we should flank left or flank right?
Yeah.
What do you think we should do? There's none of that. But we don't want to be in a situation where we're perpetually in a firefight, right? I mean, that very rarely are there organizations or teams which are perpetually in a firefight all the time.
Yeah.
And so, that's why I said like that leader sounds like, he's a bit PTSD kind of situation.
Probably is.
Where they feel like in a firefight, I cannot give praise because like if I give praise, then the person will start to stand up.
Slack.
Oh, they'll stand up and they'll be shot. And then, so it's for their sake that I'm not giving. So, part of, I think maybe helping that manager might be, hey, actually, you're safe, right? You're fairly safe, or you're like, maybe there's some challenge, but if you give that person a little bit of affirmation so that they're not like prone face to the ground, cannot do anything.
Exactly.
Or can only do the bare minimum that they can there. They could be doing a high kneel and doing much more things, right? And be much more effective for your team, which then helps you.
Yeah. So it's I think everything follows cycles and like winter and summer and all that, and it's always the peacetime and wartime, right? So mission critical things. Yeah, you are like, okay, let's go and all that. But then peacetime is also the time you can build relationships and all that. And
I wonder though, like, I mean, the seasons change, and as managers, we know that we learn how to flex. Like one of the seniors that I used to work with when I was a junior manager said to me, Neil, you're great, but you need to learn flex. You need to know when to be this and when to be that. It's not to say that you are trying to be different people. It's just you learn when to activate different strengths in different situations. And I think regardless of what season you're in, as a manager, feedback is part of your job scope, right? There isn't a situation, or very, very, very rarely, where you would say like a manager should stop giving feedback.
Never.
Right?
Never.
Maybe if like all they do is give feedback, then you're like, okay, like you need to do other things in addition to giving feedback and do some like work to make things productive. But assuming that there are certain levels, I don't think there's ever a situation where we would say like, don't give feedback to your team.
Yeah, you cannot. As a coach, whatever your sports team, the basics is that you have to notice things that they don't notice. And then when you notice it, then that helps the team to score better. And I like the word that you use, flex. I call it wisdom. Right, so wisdom is basically there are 5 right things to do. Do the right thing at the right time, to the right person, at the right place, with the right purpose. So if any of these things is off, you're not in wisdom, then don't do it. Like if I give you feedback and then somebody just passed away at home, you'd be like, wrong lah. And I had cases where a director told me that it wasn't I mean, it affected that person so much. It's like, it's a bit separate story, but the boss didn't ask her about what happened to her dad who passed away. Never ask at all. Assume that because everybody, like everybody come and say, oh, are you okay and all that. But the boss never did that. And because of that, in that she left after a while, in the exit interview, the boss asked actually why. She brought it back to that one, you didn't ask me anything.
Yeah.
It was such a big thing and you didn't ask. So it's almost the idea that you can lose people because you just don't see the human aspect. You just talk about the business aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
So flex or wisdom is knowing to do the right thing at the right time, to the right person, at the right place, with the right purpose, or sometimes you call it intention.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're not a different person. You're just navigating different times.
Yeah.
There's a general. You sometimes need to be a wartime general, and sometimes you need to be a peacetime general.
Exactly. I mean, I think one other way to think about it is almost like a hierarchy. You have Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you have physiological and self-actualization at the top, right? Actually, you think about being a manager and what your team members need from you. I think there's also a hierarchy, right? And as a manager, your first responsibility is to make sure, as you say, wellness, capacity, well-being is taken care of, right? If somebody has some bereavement in the family, no matter how much you tell them their goals, they're like, dude, I need to grieve, right?
Exactly.
So, but assuming they have capacity, then you move on to very clear goals. Do they know what project they need to work on, what the targets they're trying to reach, and what skills they should develop, right? They apply their productive capacity to those goals, right? And if they can do that already, I think like more than half of the problem solved. Like you're going to get a fairly functional work culture and work team, right? They won't be like, doing all sorts. A lot of times we skip goals because we're like, oh, but you're good, you know what to do, you're experienced, you know what to do already. And then I give you feedback, right? Hey, you did this really well, or you could maybe do this a little bit better. And then they're like, yeah, I know that I'm great I'm an extrovert and I'm good at talking to people. But if you don't tell me what my goals are, I don't know how to direct that. And so that's why goals is important before you start giving feedback. And then the next almost highest level of your role as a manager is to help people grow beyond their current, right? Which is, you can give them feedback, etc., but you then point them to the right direction and you coach them through it, right? And so if a manager is able to do those 5 things almost, and remember that there's a bit of a hierarchy, you build like team cohesiveness, the team will be doing their best work and be super impactful, right? Most people get it, this and other frameworks as managers, but I think the time is ripe at the moment where we really come alongside our managers, and I think manager burnout is like as high as it's ever been coming out of COVID. We're still in the transition, whether we like it or not, right? So if there are tools, if there are ways by which people can receive help, tech or otherwise, like leaders who are helping them to think about how to manage their teams better, I think now is the moment in history where it can make big decision, make big impact, right? Now more than ever, there are a lot of very impactful things. There are a lot of changes that humankind needs to make that will determine trajectory for us for the next 100, 200 millennium, right?
And for leadership, I believe the analogy I like is leadership is like parenting. Some people can be like a better parent. That means they can play with the kids. I have seen parents that cannot play with the kids. They're just like, I don't know what to do. I can't look like a silly clown and all that. But it's fine. But you still need to learn. You can't say that, because I'm not it's not natural to me, I won't play. Like, no lah. You have to learn. So leadership is the same, and leaders need all the help. So it's the funny thing is that they need to grow in this thing called leadership while they're still doing their own shit, and then while they're trying to help people, and whatever help they can would be great. And I want to find out from you, like, just to close this off, is if I were to, let's say I want to know, like, okay, so I have this feedback to John, and you're always late at work. What can I do to figure out? Is there a better way of doing it? Do you have any kind of a link or anything that I can like go there and then I can?
Yeah. I mean, and like give promo code coach. No. I suppose what we'll do is that we'll put something in the description later on. The whole product and platform that we partner with companies on, a big part of it is Gen AI, and a lot of the work that we do, that we let Gen AI do the heavy lifting, is around feedback giving. And so, like, if you have like thinking like, oh, I want to tell John that he's late,
and he's up.
Like, you want to write, or my boss gives me terrible goals, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do, right? You can put it into like a link or a text field, and give us a couple of details. You say generate feedback. It will rewrite the feedback for you in a neutral, slightly positive way.
And it'll be great for people who don't really have that thesaurus or taxonomy of words that some people are very gifted in, but majority of us just need some help.
And beyond that, and you can cut this out if you want, but performance appraisals generally, dirty word, right? Like, you ask me to write a performance appraisal for me. I can care very much for you, Jason, as a developing.
But I don't remember.
I don't remember. It's very painful.
Yeah.
It's form-fitting. Like
Yes.
I need to think, and there's very high emotional pressure here, right? Because I'm
Yes.
trying to think.
Very
Oh, if I'm
sensitive.
trying to promote Jason, then I need to write it the best I can, so
Yeah.
that when I go for the calibration, I'm fighting literally eloquence gap again.
Yeah.
Which we talk about.
Eloquence,
I'm fighting
I
against
like that.
other managers who are going to try and promote their people.
Yeah.
Through the platform that we have, we can generate through the power of Gen AI, as long as people have a certain number of feedback in a given period. We do it on a quarterly basis. You tell people to do quarterly performance management in companies non-tech enabled, they will, I think, all quit within a day. But
dying.
because we can leverage that, we can actually give every individual a performance appraisal every quarter based on the feedback they've been getting. So it's fact-based. They will still get the individual feedback throughout the period. And that allows them to course correct.
So wait, so once they get the feedback, there must be actionables whether or not they have done or didn't do. So that will be also insight.
So that's where you have the conversations around, like, we'll tell you what you've done well, what your superpowers are, what you need to continue to look at, and like what are your blind spots.
Right.
And obviously then offline, that's when you have the conversation with somebody and say like, hey, again, like, your over-dominating conversation.
Got it. So the next feedback, session 2 feedback, will actually help to feed session 1. It's like, hey, you did a good job for that one. So it's almost like you're building on those things.
It almost becomes like, if in this quarter I'm told that I have a particular improvement area in terms of my strengths, in my next quarter, when I set goals, remember how I talked about targets, projects, and skills?
Yes.
That becomes a skills goal. I want to improve in this particular area. And as people record that I'm improving in this area, ideally the feedback I get starts to hit this particular area, and then it becomes very visible, right? For me as a team member, I'm like, oh, what I've done has actually had fruit. And as a manager as well, like, they got feedback, they changed the way they're working, and it's like, look, there's very few better feelings than when the people that you're trying to help actually improve, right? And that stuff, right? Sales numbers will one day fade away. You get so much profit very quickly. The next quarter you can spend everything, right? And then like achievements, even you get trophies and stuff like that. All that stuff also will rust and go away, right? And the moss will destroy it, etc.
Exactly.
But when you make a difference in team members and you are helping people along their journey, I think that stuff is very much
priceless.
Priceless, and it's
eternal value.
Almost eternal value.
Yeah. Great. I really enjoyed this conversation about feedback. Is one of the most painful things that managers are still struggling with. Timeliness, how specific, and then whether they're actionable. And thank you so much for your time, Neil, and all the valuable nuggets of gold.
No, happy to. Always enjoy having conversation. This is an important conversation.
It is. And every leader must have this. Must know this.
So may every leader get better at managing their team, and may every team member encounter better managers as they go through their careers.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Thank you.